And as always, Carl wants us to stand up. Stand up and thank those people who have served this country. Stand up and just say thank you. And for those who are and those who will. Thank you, Carl. Simmons Lock and Key, 209-4325. David Justice, how you doing?
Hey, good morning, Jim.
Here's a guy that stands up. How's it going? You doing your thing? Are you?
Yeah, I'm doing my thing.
Yeah, I know you get beat up.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
I was having a conversation with a friend earlier this morning, and integrity is a standard that I set for myself. And whenever I don't meet up to that standard, the gap between where I am and that standard makes me very uncomfortable. So I get back up, knock the dust off, and keep going, and move toward that standard.
Let me ask you something. We've been doing this for how long again?
Jim,
over a year.
No, it's 2 years.
It is 2 years?
It's 2 years.
Holy cow. Anyway, why? Why do you do what you do? What do you want to accomplish?
Well, the simple answer is because I choose to. I'm driven to. I feel compelled to.
What is it that you do, by the way?
What do I do?
How would you classify yourself?
I've asked me this. I'm an activist. I'm a constitutional conservative activist. I'm an American activist that when I look out across the political landscape and the social and religious and economic landscapes and the educational landscape, I see a deficiency. And so, to be true to myself, I choose to understand the difference between where we are and an ideal where I think the American people could be. And that ideal to me is the kingdom of heaven on earth. Now, there's an ideal. What does that mean? So I spend my time better defining that. But really it comes down to honor, integrity, virtue, truth. And those are the standard that I set for myself. And so it requires me to know the truth. And so that's what drives me, just that inner desire. And, having 4 sons was a huge wake-up call for me. My oldest is 25, and so when I found out that Karen was pregnant with Jacob, that's when I really got serious about being a difference in the world that I would like to see the world be. And so that's when I really began my intensive study on the principles of what America was founded on, or is founded on, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. But I started out my studies really in the Bible. That's where I began my work. My question back then was, what's the truth even in the Bible? There's all these different religious denominations, and I'd been in and out of several of those, and I couldn't figure out how, if we just have one God, how there could be so many different opinions and ideas as to what that is all about, that relationship. So I began my study there, and then that took me into a question of politics and how does church and state, what's the relationship between church and state? So after studying that question for a number of years, I began to ask this question about the kingdom of heaven. And is this a political concept? Is it a religious concept? What was Jesus talking about? And looking at the founding fathers and the conflict between church and state back then, the Church of England and King George, and there's a lot of things that have occupied my thoughts over the years, because I wanted to teach my sons the truth about religion, economy, politics, education. And so before I could begin to teach them those things, I felt that I needed to explore those things for myself and come to some conclusions. So what you're witnessing right here is this is a work in progress. Constant.
Just sitting there thinking about really, if we are to, the direction that our country is going is one thing, but the direction of our lives, the direction of society, it all mixes together. And if not everybody's going to do it the way you did it. Not everybody wants to or can or, whatever. We're all different. But we all have to come up with some sort of a transformation, or it's going to start with us. We talk about I was telling you about people who are getting frustrated making calls, and don't quit calling, don't quit writing letters, don't quit that, folks. But we have to start in our own little local area that's between the walls of our homes and build that and go that. That's the foundation has to, we got to get back to the foundation and start over, basically, and bring this thing back, because quite frankly, these people that are out here supposedly representing us or whatever they're doing in most cases, that's a whole different ballgame than what we can do with power and strength in our own home and start exuding that and getting that out.
I think it always begins in the home. If it doesn't begin and actually it begins inside each individual. One thing I introduced my sons to is the concept that we have to be individually the change we want to see in the world. And it was Gandhi that said that, and I just took that from him because I really like it. We have to live into being the example that we want to see in the world. And so I'm real concerned about what's going on out in the world, but I'm every bit as concerned about the change in me. And moving into that integrity, if we each would take that on within ourselves, I think the world would take care of itself. So it really always comes down to an individual choice, an individual liability relative to the principle of integrity and virtue. I think that ultimately will bring us into the place where when the time comes to stand, we will stand. I believe that success is when preparation meets opportunity. And so if we're prepared when the opportunity presents itself, then we will walk through that opportunity successfully. And I guess I anticipate an opportunity coming. And I'm always preparing for that opportunity, whatever it is. And that opportunity, as it presents itself, will be a test for me and for others if given that opportunity. How will we deal with it? And right now I see the world coming into this opportunity. We're given a choice here. And yeah, I get frustrated sometimes, but you know what? Studying history has taught me the alternative to what's coming is a pretty ugly scenario. I don't particularly like what I've seen in history about how tyrants come to power. Mao Zedong or Stalin or Hitler, Genghis Khan. There's a lot of examples in history where tyranny takes over and millions of people die. And just knowing that about history gives me a point of view to, okay, well, how do we not go there? What could we do now to prevent that from coming in the future? And I started seeing those signs of moving off toward that direction. I was seeing that back in the 80s. And I was able to extrapolate, because of my knowledge of history, that America's going this way. This is the way it goes. If we separate the principle of truth out of politics, we want to separate God out of politics. Well, if you substitute the word truth for God, it's the same thing. God is truth. If you substitute truth from politics, then you have a bunch of liars running the government of the world. And if we have liars running the governments of the world, then is it any wonder we end up in the place where we are? So,
are we in an accelerated phase right now?
I think so. I think it feeds on itself. And it's difficult to trust, like this filibuster yesterday. I was totally caught up in that. I was going to watch it. I thought I was going to come in with a hangover because I wasn't going to sleep last night watching that. But the fact that, here's an example. the Eric Holder and their and Obama's suggestion or his desire to appoint this particular Bennett, what's his name? I can't reel it in. John, I had it last night. But he won't even disclose whether or not they have intend. Well, actually, they used the word intend. They were evasive in their answer. The question on the table was, are you going to use these drones to murder American citizens on American soil without giving them due process? That was really the question that Rand Paul was standing on last night during this filibuster. And finally, after, 12 hours of filibustering this issue, a lot of the senators came back in and finally got their mind around the significance of what it was that Rand was standing on. We're talking about summary judgment, killing Americans on American soil without due process, based upon an arbitrary, and the administration would consider an imminent threat. And Rand Paul just wanted some clarification on that issue. Because if they're going to, how do they say it, ratify or endorse or confirm Obama's appointment, they want to know what kind of a man they're putting in there. And they couldn't get a straight answer out of Obama or Eric Holder or this new guy relative to whether they're going to use that power to murder American citizens. So that's what the filibuster was about. And all of a sudden it ended last night. I couldn't figure out whether I missed something or whether they had actually come to some sort of resolution. But they should have reconvened right now. And I suppose they're talking about that Senate confirmation right now.
But how do you get an explanation for this? How can you not just say no? How can you not just clear the table of this issue? Because there is no explanation. There is no guarantee. There are none. No,
it's not. During the course of the filibuster, Rand and several other senators, which I just had to applaud what I was hearing, if these guys were actually implementing what I was hearing last night, this was a major opportunity to have a major make a difference in the course of this country. The question on the table, is it constitutional? Is it lawful? And so there was a lot of conversation about the Constitution and how the government is bound to obey the law of the Constitution, and wouldn't that be a good idea if we did that? And where does the president stand on that issue? Does the president believe that the Constitution, is it a constitutional thing that the president would be able to conduct these airstrikes on citizens? And so the filibuster was good in that it revealed that a number of senators were actually very cognizant that the Constitution is law, and that to be a lawful nation and for the government to act lawfully, they had to consider whether the Constitution sanctioned that kind of conduct or not.
Does the Constitution really matter with this? Is it going to matter?
You know why it matters? It does matter. Here's the matter. It's, again, a standard. How do I measure my conduct if I don't have a standard against which I measure my conduct? The Constitution is that standard. How do we know that we need a Second Amendment? When the government goes to violate it. When the government comes to get our guns, that's when we need the Second Amendment to protect us against the government that's coming to get the guns, because the Founding Fathers knew, and this was also spoken of in the filibuster last night, the Founding Fathers knew that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But let's just come back to power corrupts. Knowing that power corrupts, the Constitution was written to tell the government, here's what you may do, and while you're doing that, here's what you may not do. Or I shouldn't use the word may, I should use the word. Here's what you shall do. I should use the word shall instead of may. Here's what you shall do, and here's what you shall not do while you're doing what you shall do. You know, the idea of a republic, and this is what the president appears to have forgotten, and you know what? I'm not going to limit it to just Obama. I'm going to go back to Bush and Clinton and Bush and on back. The president only has the authority that the Constitution defines for him. And the president only has the authority that Congress makes laws for the president to enforce. There's absolutely no authority in the Constitution whatsoever for the president to act arbitrarily based upon his own will. That's the definition of a dictatorship or a totalitarian dictatorship. The Congress and the president are a division of power. The Congress writes the law. The president enforces the law. That's the republic form of government that we're guaranteed by the Constitution.
This little pocket Constitution I'm waving at you right now is not relevant to these people.
Watch this. You're going to go there. Watch this. Let's play a little game here.
Okay.
You know what? That travel management plan's irrelevant. You guys want me to honor that travel management plan that you spent millions of dollars and hundreds of hours putting that together. And the liberals are getting real upset because we stood up there in Pitkin and had a road opened. And they want to throw that travel management plan in our face and say, yeah, but look at all the time and all the money that went into this travel management plan. And now you're holding it in contempt because you think you can just go out and open up a road. So why are we holding a different standard to the travel management plan and the Constitution? This government expects me to obey its laws, and yet it itself won't obey the laws that it's bound to. And that law is the Constitution.
Let me ask you this.
So what a double standard we have going here.
So let's move further down the road into the future. Constitution is not relevant. It doesn't matter to these people. They can and quite frankly, they're right in a lot of cases because they can get the court system on their side and they can get the decisions that they need to have. So therefore, that cancels out. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right. Didn't you say that? Somebody said that.
Yeah, so just because something's legal doesn't mean that it's right. Right.
So we go down the road, and what has held this country together at times throughout the history of this country? We go down the road. If you definitely, I didn't used to be I hated conspiracy theories before. I believe in some of them now. You go down the road. This whole package has been put down the road for a long time because they know what will happen if we lose that foundation, if we don't live, and if we don't govern by this book right here. Down the road, you have no order, and you have real power.
Let's go there. Order. That's what the people really want. Order. And out of order, we can have some peace. And people like order. Law.
How do you define that?
Law and order. Here, I'm going to define it for you. Law and order, and you've heard me say it again, and people are going to get really tired of this example. This laptop in front of me, the airwaves that we're broadcasting on, it took a very precise technological order to cause this to happen. If science didn't follow that order, that law, we would not be talking on this radio. We would not have the cell phones. We would not have the computer technology. The law of nature dictates that either you follow it or you don't get anything done. Either you follow the laws and the principles of the laws of nature, or you have disorder and confusion and lawlessness. Electricity. You don't tell electricity what to do. Electricity tells us how it works, and then science then creates transistors and resistors and computer chips and now we're LEDs and all of the little small electrical parts that we can't even begin to look at that cell phone. What that'll do. That's following the law. I know, and everybody does know, that in order to have order in a society, you have to have law. Law is what is the foundation of order. What happens, though, when the government itself begins to hold law in contempt? What happens when the government steps out of the boundaries of law? And then it turns around and expects the people to obey its law, which is not really law at all, because it stepped off the law in order to make that law.
The government steps off the law to make law. That's what you said, right? So where do we draw that line?
Well,
whose law are we talking about?
That's a great question, and that's what we all need to be asking. That's a philosophical ideal, but it's not really, because that is based in truth. Law always has its basis in truth. 1 + 1 is 2. It's not 3. You can argue all day long about 1 and 1 is 3, and you're not going to get anywhere with that. But if the government writes a law and says, okay, 1 and 1 is now 3, does that law now make 1 and 1 3? Or is that law void on its face because it makes no sense? It has no foundation in any semblance of sanity or reality.
There's people out here. I'm going to play the devil's advocate. Then we got to go to the news, okay? Because this is important.
Yeah.
There's people out there right now who are going, okay, we have let's break it into some simplicity. We have a law that says we can only drive 25 miles per hour through a residential section. Why was that law founded? Why is that a good law? There's some obvious reasons for that, right? We also have a law that says you have to have a driver's license. Why was that? Tell me the difference.
The state has within its power what is called the police power. And the police power is the power to regulate public safety and health, public health, safety, and welfare. And under this power, the government claims the right to regulate. Okay, regulate means to make regular. It means to pass certain laws that everybody agrees to follow, because the regularity of order would be better served by those laws. So the police power comes in and to regulate. And that's really the essence of government. Okay, regulation in government. The speed limit, the 25 mile an hour speed limit, that means that some tests were done. They conducted to see how fast would be safe in this area, and so they posted a sign, speed limit. But if you go into Colorado statutes, the speed limit regulation or the statute really says prudent. It says what is safe and prudent, but it shows up on the road as 25 miles an hour. Now, So is that a determination of prudent? The 25 is a presumptive speed that constitutes prudent. It's a presumptive speed, 25 miles an hour. And so in that area, there's a presumption that all of those tests were taken and all of the everything that goes into deciding that this area is 25 miles an hour. Okay, that's a different kind of law than the law of nature. Okay, that is a law based upon a lot of opinions and ideas and conjecture, and that law is movable. It can be changed. It's not absolute. It's there. It's posted, but and while it's there, it has the effect of being absolute, because you try to go into court and fight it, you'll end up, depending on whether the proper tests were done, you might even be able to beat it. But that's an arbitrary, movable statute or law, and that's something that came down from the state legislature. That's not the same thing as a law of nature. A law of nature, you can't break it. You try to break a law of nature, you try to defy gravity without using another law, the law of aerodynamics, you're going to find yourself fighting a futile battle, because the law of gravity is an absolute concept. Aerodynamics, those laws, their airplanes wouldn't fly unless they complied with those laws. So the distinction is, some laws are absolute, immutable. You can't argue with them, and if you do, it carries within it its own natural punishment for violating that natural law. These other laws that are passed by the legislatures, I would call that, even to a point, sophistry. If those laws are not consistent with the laws of nature, if those laws are not consistent with the principles that the Declaration of Independence said are self-evident truths, those laws are void.
Devil's advocate here again.
Okay.
Driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that fall?
That is a police power statute. There's an argument that the driver's license is issued by the state in its municipal capacity. In its municipal capacity means in its corporate capacity. The driver's license statutes are written under and enforced by, written for and enforced by the Department of Revenue. So the driver's license statutes and all of the motor vehicle statutes, those are statutes to enhance the state's revenue. The driver's license is a privilege issued by the state. It's a grant or a benefit issued by the state to allow people to enjoy travel or driving on the highways under the regulations set up to regulate the driver's license laws. So that's an area of state control through its corporate powers. And where are we going with the question?
I guess the question is that constitutional? Is that something that we have to abide by in order to drive?
I tell you what, I've taken on the driver's license issue, and it's been a little experiment of mine for a number of years. Did you want to go to a break before we start talking about it?
Or we do. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's come back to
this. Is the reason I'm asking you this.
Sure.
Because there's people out there that know what you've been doing, and I want to get this to light and get your full explanation.
Okay, let's do that.
And see the difference between the two.
All right, this should be fun.
Yeah, it will be.
Thanks for the opportunity.
David Justice is here. We'll be right back after the news.